let me go ahead and have you introduce yourself and let me know a little bit about you, like what you do. I know some basics of your background, but we'll get into it in a moment.
Sure. So my name is Jon Chan. I graduated with an accounting degree, worked as a consultant, worked in the accounting industry for 16 years, and just went full-time real estate investor about 5 months ago.
Okay, cool. I try to do like research a little bit to try to know like who I'm going to be interviewing, and also to try to prepare questions.
Sure.
Partly because of time constraints, and also just because I didn't see a whole lot of information out there. I don't have a whole lot of things like prepared, so we'll just kind of jump into kind of the more conversational style of things.
Sure.
If you could maybe just give me like a highlight, an overview, just like kind of the main things that kind of shaped who you are today, what your overall perspective of the world is, just the things that like kind of change you in one way or another.
Sure. So I grew up to immigrant parents. I used to live in the Northern Virginia, just outside of DC area, small suburb at the time. Now it's pretty crazy. But a place called Springfield, Virginia.
Okay.
At a very young age, my parents had come from Hong Kong, moved here to go to college, and then I was actually born in New York.
Okay.
My parents spent a lot of time just working and just shipped me off to daycare. So they didn't really have a good understanding of the American culture and what it was like to be here. Their main focus was to just pretty much survive. So I got to encounter a lot of different things and had to learn a lot of things on my own, just about the country and I guess how to live in the US.
Okay. So just kind of building off that a little bit, what would you say your childhood? I know you did mention in another interview that you were briefly in Hong Kong for about 6 months, right? But outside of that, you were mostly like born and raised in America. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean, the reason why I moved back to Hong Kong is because my dad wasn't sure if he could find a job here. Ended
Right.
up finding a job, so we came back here.
Right. And so what I was wondering was because like by most measurements, were born and raised in American culture, right? So,
Mhm.
were there like any obvious differences between the kind of culture that you grew up with and also the culture that your parents had? And do you feel like there was any friction just in trying to kind of reconcile those two things?
Well, I mean, looking back, yeah, my parents had a very different upbringing. So my mom was one of 8 children,
Hmm.
and the only place I remember her living in was like I don't know if you know the housing situation in Hong Kong, but it's pretty much all like high rise buildings,
Right.
and so her and her parents, my grandparents, they had a bed, which was you had to climb up to a ladder and get right close to the ceiling. And it was just a huge platform with a bunch of cushions and everything. And that's where everyone slept.
Right.
My dad grew up, didn't have any money. They actually lived on top of a building where they had a makeshift house where it's just made out of like metal sheets and everything. And that's how they lived. Now here, I grew up a lot more comfortable, so it was very different. But culture-wise, like I had things that not a lot of my friends at the time or people that I grew up with understood or knew about. Like a lot of food from like Asian food, a lot of customs that we had to deal with, or that not to deal with, but we grew up with. It just wasn't around, and I don't know if I had any as a child. It was very rare for me to have anybody with a similar background to me. It was a lot of Caucasians, but
Right.
where I grew up, yeah.
I was wondering if maybe you could give me some examples of like, maybe things that were different, like that, maybe your classmates didn't understand, or just, were not aware of.
Yeah, so mainly it's like the food, right? So
Right.
when we have the food, my parents are always big on cooking and like noodles and stuff that we weren't used to seeing in the school lunches. School lunches, a lot of sandwiches and pizza and things that we enjoy here in the U.S. So that was having to deal with that. Plus, I look different than most of my classmates, so that was like something that I had to go through. It was very different, 30 years ago versus it, than it is now.
Yeah. I mean, I was there, but I mean, I was young, but I don't know. How old are you? You were probably around the same age, right?
I'm 41.
Okay. I'm a
Yeah.
little younger, but,
Yeah.
more or less. And, So I mean, like, yeah, things have changed a lot. And I mean, like, were you going to school in Virginia? Is that correct? Or okay, so
Yeah, Springfield, Virginia. Yeah.
right. And I wasn't really familiar. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the demographics in Virginia, but I'm guessing very white.
Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy how much has changed now because um, it was mostly white. I think in my school it was mostly white. You know, it was pretty I guess diverse more than where I live now here in Orlando. Well, it was a different type of diversity, but now it's very different. It's it's vastly different.
Right. Do you ever feel like you were singled out as a kid, or like, I mean, I feel like I did like kind of watch another interview that you did. You mentioned that you had like kind of a lot of friends, but it also seemed to vary a little bit. So I was just like trying to kind of get more in depth into that, into your like kind of schoolhood.
Yeah, it was interesting, right? So when I was the younger elementary school years, I did feel sometimes isolated and a little bit, on the outside. But a lot of it could just have been my own mental things as well. Like I just didn't know.
Right.
But then as time went on, it became less about what I looked like and more about who I was. And I had a lot of friends, especially because I went to daycare,
Right.
which fed into my elementary school. But then switching school districts because my parents got divorced when I was 7. So I continued in my career, my elementary school career at the same school. But then switching schools was definitely different because then it was a completely different demographic. It was like on the other side of town, a lot more minorities. So yeah, it was like it was very weird, very very big change.
Right. So you said your parents got divorced. I was wondering what the kind of dynamic of that was, in terms of, were you staying with one, both, or like flipping back and forth, or
Yeah, so I was flipping back and forth, and it was every week. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'd be with my dad, and then the rest of the time, I'd be with my mom.
okay. Did you have a favorite? Are you allowed to say that?
I mean, just in terms of stuff, because my mom's side felt like it was more home, so I had more of my toys there. My clothes were all there. My console game, my video game consoles were all over there. And
Right,
then as I got
right,
older, my computer was over there. So yeah, it was a little bit different. But I was more about the stuff than my parents. My parents are both amazing.
right. Yeah, I used to. My parents also got divorced when I was young, and like, so I would really only stay at my dad's for one day every week, and so I mean, like, by far, my mom's was the favorite, just because, like you said, like all your stuff is there, right? Like you got your
Yeah.
video games and all that, and then my dad's was just like a place that you go to, because, well, for me, I don't know
Mhm.
I don't want to speak on your experience, but for me, it
Yeah.
was just like a place that I go to because I'm required to or something.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of, like, I didn't have a super deep close connection, so it's just like, I kind of just went over there, watched TV. We didn't really talk a whole lot, and then
Mhm.
just kind of went back. And it just kind of, as I got older, it just feels kind of weird. It's just like it felt kind of pointless. But so I mean,
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
yeah,
yeah,
go
we
ahead.
had something very similar where in the early years when my parents first got divorced, it was a lot of sports, like watching TV. But
Yeah.
then my dad would like put up a huge hoop, or not a huge, but those kid hoops, those
Mhm.
plastic ones, and then he put it on top of something to make it higher, and we just play basketball inside, or we
Right.
take his car to go get an oil change, and there's a field next to the gas station. We just throw the baseball back and forth. So like memories like that were pretty cool, but it was a lot of like TV too.
Right. Trying to think. So you were an only child, right?
Yep.
Did you ever feel like, you missed having siblings? Do you feel like, that's, something that would have altered your life in some kind of way?
Yeah, it definitely would have altered my life. So, one of the things that I had learned about being an only child is that you're either more like the older child in a sibling dynamic or more like the younger child. And to me, I mean, my wife's she's the youngest child, and just going based off of that, like we shouldn't be working out, but I lean more towards being like an older child. So I like that. And I also spend a lot of time in my own head, just like thinking about things. And I
Mhm.
think that's just my personality, whether I would have had siblings or not. But I do see the dynamic that my wife has with her brothers, and I think I did miss out on a lot of like things that they got to do because it was a lot of me being on my own and just trying to entertain myself and do different things by myself, figuring things out.
So I mean, like you were just saying that you were like in your head a lot, and so I also get into my head a lot too. And
Mm.
and I wasn't an only child; I was the oldest child, but like I had a pretty big age gap with my siblings, and so
Yeah.
I still kind of just felt like an only child, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Just
It does.
because they were just like not a super noticeable part of my life because they were so young by the time that like I moved out, that like by the time they were like fully coherent and like making sentences and being able to carry
Hmm.
out a full conversation, I was pretty much like gone. And
Hmm.
but I mean, I feel like for myself, I definitely like have this habit. And I mean, it might be a little bit different for you. I don't know. I think I had more of like an isolated childhood. But I think that a lot of the times I really just get into my own head because I never really kind of learned how to create those social interactions outside of it. Because I mean, and for many, many reasons, but like, it's for me just trying to figure out how to kind of, uh, I don't know, find my space in certain things.
Yeah, I mean that's something that it's been difficult for me to get used to because sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll have this whole thing going on in my head about like this whole like world in my head, and then my wife will be sitting next to me and then say, "What are you thinking about?" And then I go through and I tell her all the rabbit holes that that my mind goes through, and it's weird because sometimes you have conversation, or sometimes I have conversations in my own head with her, and I think that I give her all the information when we're talking about something, but
Right,
I don't.
right,
Um,
right.
yeah.
Um, what's funny is that like I was thinking about it because I started going to therapy recently, and
Hmm.
well, like within the last year, and
Yeah.
I like so what one thing I kind of realized, and I'm not sure, like part of it, like I do, I have been a drinker for a while, and part of it might be that, part of it is also just like in general I've spent a lot of my life like kind of like trying to suppress emotions, but
Hmm.
I feel like I've learned that overall I don't really resonate with a lot of emotions, right? Like if you ask me how I'm feeling, usually like if I can give you like, a couple of them. If I'm angry, I can definitely tell you I'm angry. If I'm
Yeah.
sad, sometimes I can tell you, for the most part I can tell you I'm sad. Happy doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I can notice that. But then once I got into therapy, that's when I started realizing that there were a lot of emotions that I never even really thought about, never noticed. I never really like acknowledged that they existed.
Yeah.
So one of them was like guilt. I do feel guilty about some of the things that I did in my past, but in the present moment, I very rarely ever feel guilt. I don't feel a lot of shame, jealousy. I don't know. It's like and it's not even that I'm not feeling them. I think what I've like kind of learned just from like trying to look up, YouTube videos and stuff on, psychology is that like if you suppress one emotion, you end up kind of suppressing all of them. And I think that I'm still experiencing these emotions, but I'm still
Yeah.
not really fully processing them. And what you said about kind of like having conversations about having conversations with your wife, in general, I feel like when I have conversations like in my head with other people,
Hmm.
I've come to kind of identify that as anxiety. Now I don't know if that's your case here, but I mean, in terms of like just being able to kind of the whole thing about anxiety is really just trying to be able to kind of damage control and go into a situation and be fully prepared and know exactly what's going to happen. And the kind of the worry that like if you don't have that, then you might go unprepared and then like something bad might happen from it or a non-optimal thing might happen. So when you were saying like kind of like having conversations with people in your head and like going down rabbit holes, I absolutely do that. But I don't know if you kind of get that same kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's more strategy based because I left my W two to become a full time real estate investor, and so my wife doesn't work. She homeschools the kids. And
Right.
so to me, like my whole sole purpose well, not sole purpose, but the major purpose I have in this family is to provide. And so I'm always looking for the easiest, most efficient way to provide for the family. And so that's why I'm always like stuck in my head, just like thinking strategy. But yeah, going back to what you said about suppressing emotions, that's something that I did as a child as well. I remember some of my earliest memories were, me losing it as a kid, right? Being upset about something, crying about something, and then having my parents tell me that that's not okay. Like, get over it, essentially, right? You're not
Right.
allowed to have these types of feelings. And so, about a month, a year and a year, 13 months ago, so about a year ago, I went to this real estate mastermind, and we did this thing called somatic breath work. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
So it's this. I mean, if I were to have walked by this room that we were in at this casino in this conference room and saw like 150 people laying on white sheets, like laying down with the big speaker in the middle, I would have thought it was a cult, right? But I mean, it was like
Can
you
you tell
sit.
me what is it exactly? Like,
Yeah. So basically, you're in this room, right? And then you have this loudspeaker playing this specific type of music, which goes for like an hour and 15 minutes. And what it does is it puts you in like three different phases. So phase one, or stages, I guess, they're all very similar. Um, and the way it is you breathe a certain way. So you lay down. I had a blindfold and I had a sweater on because apparently you get cold sometimes when you
mhm.
do this. And you just lay there, and then someone will say, "Okay, start breathing." And then the way that you breathe is you breathe in through your mouth like this, like over and over and over until the apparently the pH of your blood changes. So
Mm.
then if you're holding on to a lot of things, like your limbs will start getting tingly and your hands will start going like this. And so that's what happened to me. So I did that, and so you do that for I think like 15 or 20 minutes, and then you do like a 2 minute breath hold. And because you've done this breathing and you're full of oxygen, you can handle that 2 minute breath hold like no problem. And
Mhm.
as you do this, all these like untapped emotions start coming out. So the reason why I went there is because like I had been working to be a real estate investor like full time for years now, and just not feeling I was making any progress. And so I went there hoping to find some answers. Like before the session, they ask you, what is it that you're looking for? In one word, what is it that you're looking for? And I said clarity, right? Because I wanted to know, like, should I even be doing this anymore? So I go in, no expectations, and uh, the first breath hold. After the first breath hold, like this huge release of emotion just came out. Like I had not cried like that since I was a baby. I can't remember the last time I cried, right? And so I did that, and then the first thing that came to my head was like, be more grateful for the people around you. Like you're taking your kids, you're taking your wife for granted. Stop. This is what you need to be appreciative of. And then you go through that, and then you go through the breath. You keep doing the breathing thing, and then second thing comes up, and so this one says, be grateful for your parents. Like they have done a lot for you to help you, do all this, right? And then again, I start bawling, right? Same thing. And then the third thing is you're here meant to be. The third thing that I went through is you're meant to go out and help people. So figure it out. Like how do you help people, right? And
Mhm.
so it was like three rushes of emotions that I had never experienced before. And then after that, my wife says like I become more patient. Like I still lose my temper sometimes, but like that, was completely life changing. Just an hour, 15 minutes.
Right. That sounds very intense for like a real estate thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So the reason why that my coach, my mentor does that is because he attends these masterminds that you need to be making, you need to have a net worth of like 100 million, and you have to be generating at least 10 million a year in revenue, and it's $100,000 a year. And so because they do that in those masterminds, he brought it to us.
So
So
it
it's
was
just
basically like, they had access to it in kind of this 1% type of
mhm.
deal, and he just basically kind of, shared the
Yeah,
knowledge.
yeah, exactly.
That is interesting and
So
cool.
highly recommend it because it helps release a lot of emotions for me. Because again, like I'm with you. I didn't understand many emotions. I didn't understand what they were for, or what they felt like, and so or how to identify them. Right.
Right. And that's really the hard part for me is like just trying to like because sometimes I literally have to stop and I have to think like what am I feeling right now? And
Hmm.
sometimes I don't know. Like and you know, I've watched another video and like I saw like you know not a philosopher, is a psychologist. And he was saying like you know that you know you tend to feel like certain emotions in certain parts of your bodies, and I'm
Hmm.
literally trying to think about like okay like do I feel anything in my chest or my arms
Yeah.
or anything like that, and I still have a hard time trying to identify what it is I'm feeling, and allegedly according to this psychologist, like you're always feeling something. Like right now, I'm sure. Like I can only kind of infer from context clues. Like right now, we're having a interview, so I probably feel you know some level of anxiety, some level of fear, some level of you know
Yeah.
whatever those things are. So a lot of that, you know, just like trying to identify it, but it's very difficult when you don't really have an obvious like you know tell. It's like being colorblind,
Mhm.
but to your emotions. I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, real estate is kind of a horror. Like, to me, it's a terrifying, like, you know, career, right? Like, because I feel like anything commission based, anything that requires me to be a salesperson, I don't feel like I could do very well in it. And also, I'm always afraid of this idea that, like, I don't have a guaranteed paycheck, right? Do you like how did you kind of get into real estate? How did you kind of decide that you were going to do it? And you know, I'm sure there are ups and downs. Is it you know difficult to try to like you know to try to go out there with that level of uncertainty, knowing that like you know there is a chance that you could make $0 this year, right? It's not a you know high chance, but like you know it's still a possibility.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is really stressful. I mean, I came into this during the COVID epidemic or pandemic. Um, and because I work for a startup in consulting, right, for government contractors. And at that time, everything was shutting down. So
Right.
I didn't know if we were going to make it. I didn't know if companies were going to have a budget. Um, and so I looked into, I know my dad had a couple rental properties in the Northern Virginia area. So I started running the numbers. I had heard, oh, you can get rich this way. And I was running the numbers. It just didn't make sense because they were cash flowing. They weren't even cash flowing, meaning, you know, the rents were barely covering the mortgages. And so started digging into like how to get rich in real estate. And at that time I thought, okay, well, if my wife or myself don't make it through this, I want to make sure that the family's comfortable enough so that we don't have to fire sell everything and change, you know, how we live. So started digging, found out that you can um, how to analyze a property, how to buy a property long distance, how to force appreciation, and really just kind of went from there. And yeah, it's been stressful. It's been a stressful 4 years, right?
Yeah, I feel like you
I-
picked a really bad time too. Also, it's like when did you get into real estate though?
right when everything shut down, pretty
Yeah.
much. And so I heard all the warning signs, like don't get into real estate. It's gonna tank, right? Luckily, it didn't. Right? I ignored all that because I figured it's always a bad time. It's never going to be the perfect time to do anything,
Right.
right? It's that one quote from, I don't know if you watched The Office, but Pam was, so one of the characters as secretary. She has this dream of being an artist, right? And just always kept pushing off art school.
Right.
And so the executive comes in and hosts like a small, I don't know what they call it, like a meeting or something, just to network and get to know the staff. And she says, like, these are really good. Like, why don't you go to art school? She says, oh, and she lists all these excuses. And the executive turns to her and says, there's always going to be a million reasons not to do something.
Right.
And for whatever reason, that just stuck with me. So I said, all right, this is, I have a nice safety net. I have a good paying job. Just do it. And so I did
Right.
it. Luckily, everything has worked out really well.
Right.
But yeah, it's stressful because I was just talking to my friend about this. He's running a bunch of things. He's got an engineering company, but we're both like cash poor because we take all the money that we get and we send it off into investments. And yeah, it's stressful to watch the bank account go up and then down and then up and then down and these large swings. But it's also kind of fun too.
Right, right. I can get that. Like, you know, in general, I mean, there is a level of whatever the word is. adrenaline I think that you get from, just, I mean, like I've tried playing this, day trading, like, a little
Mhm.
bit. I lost like a couple $100 and I was like, not for me. And
Yeah.
I'm thankful. I have a lot of addictions, but gambling is not one of them. And I'm very, very grateful because I would be screwed if otherwise. Um,
Yeah.
can you tell me about what happened? Like, what was COVID like for you? Because I know you said you were kind of like in the market, you were into this new career, but then you also have, kind of the pressure of the lockdowns. Were you in Virginia at the time? Or
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and so were things closing down around you? Were you still going out, or were you doing things like online, trying to make deals, or how buying and selling work in the pandemic?
Yeah, so it was honestly there's a lot of anxiety, right? Everything shut down where I was at, and whenever we had to go out get groceries, is always be me by myself, and wear a mask, and even just driving around, even though I was in the car by myself, it was like empty. There's nobody out there,
Right.
and it was like a ghost town. And I live in an area like the DC metro area. Um, like 8 million, 9 million people in that area alone. And so to have the streets just empty, it just started causing like a lot of anxiety. And then when you're in the grocery store picking up your things, like there's no one there and everyone's avoiding each other. It was pretty scary. But I just remember viewing this whole situation as, well, people are either going to come out worse or they're going to come out better. Which one do I want to be?
Right.
So I decided I want to come out better. So I started exercising and really digging like full force into real estate by um, audiobooks, YouTube, podcasts. And then at that point, everything was long distance because it just didn't make sense for me to, um, with my strategy, it didn't make sense for me to buy locally. So everything I was doing was online anyways and
Right.
far away. So it really wasn't bad. It was just a matter of just keeping track, staying on top of things.
Can you tell me something like, can you tell me how you kind of go through day to day and maybe in terms of like, even the pandemic thing, like you said, you can come out of this better or you can come out of this worse. And it's one thing to have that thought, but like, how do you personally try to kind of, make sure that you keep to that message? How do you make sure that you are, on track and you're like, I mean, do you have ups and downs? Do you feel like, there are days where you feel like depressed and you're like, oh, I'm a failure. I didn't do this. And like, how do you get out of that mentality and get into a mentality of where you're just like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go, do what I need to do, make the money I need to make. And like, there's definitely a lot of people I think in the world that are kind of stuck in one and have a hard time getting to the other. And I don't know
Yeah.
how, like, I was hoping you could kind of shed some light on how you do that.
Sure. I mean, the biggest impact that anything has had on me, and I guess in terms of habits, is this book called Atomic Habits,
Hmm.
and resonate with this like so clearly. Typically, when we decide we want to make a change in our life, it is this grand thing. Like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to lose 100 pounds, I'm going to put on like 50 pounds of muscle, right? I'm going to
Right.
work out 4 times a week. I'm going to do this, and this every single day.
Right.
And it's difficult. Like with anything, if you are going out and trying to make a huge change, it starts off small. And
Hmm.
so Atomic Habits just said, all right, well, if you want to make a change in your life, don't try to do this grand plan, right? If your goal is to work out every single day, then do one set of one exercise every single day. Then when that becomes too easy, then you do two sets. Then you move on. Like I started off just doing deadlifting the bar 3 times, 3 sets a day, and that's it. Nothing else. 45
Right.
pounds. Right. And then that turned into, oh, I guess I'm feeling good enough so I can start adding weight. So start adding weight. And then say, oh, maybe I can start doing these exercises again. So then you just slowly, it just builds on top of it. And Jerry Seinfeld has this great thing about him and telling jokes. He get one of those calendars, right? And his goal was to tell one joke or create a new joke every single day. And every
Right.
single day he does, he draws an X on that day. And
Right.
then you can visually see the impact that you're having on yourself. And it's just inevitable that you're going to make a change. And so Atomic Habits to me was like a huge thing. Now to answer your question about feeling like a failure. Yeah, man, like all the time. The number of times where I have to say God's angel, universe, whatever it is, please get me through this is it's like multiple times a week.
Right.
I'm if people look at my situation, if I looked at my situation now, um 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 months ago, I would have viewed this person as successful. However, I'm in this situation right now and I still have doubts. I still feel I have the imposter syndrome. I still go through like all the insecurities, uh, like making mistakes. I just made a mistake that I'm dealing with right now where I had a house that I closed on that I had to pay for. Now my bank account's super low, and I have all these other things that I'm waiting for to come in because I just didn't plan it properly. And
Right.
so, like things like that, it's yeah, it's stressful. But we all go through things. I used to chase this idea of not having any problems, but life is always going to come with problems. It's like, do you want to have the same old problems or do you want to chase new problems?
Right. Hold on one sec. I usually get to prepare like more questions, but I'm just like,
It's okay. I mean, I used to live in Northern Virginia. I lived in Northern Virginia for 40 years, maybe 39 years. I
right.
just moved down here to Central Florida.
Oh, you're in
Um,
Florida now?
yeah, I'm in Florida now. I mean, it's
Where at?
nice. Just outside Orlando.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in St. Petersburg,
Okay.
which is like right outside Tampa, if you're familiar. Uh,
Yep.
so I mean, like, how long ago did you move to Orlando? Or-
September of 23.
right.
Yeah.
And do you feel like, I mean, how do you like it there? Do you feel like I mean, it's definitely probably a different place than Virginia. I mean, they're still both kind of south, right? It's
Yeah.
definitely, but Orlando in particular, and I know you said you're outside of the city, but you're still probably in proximity to all that traffic, all the people coming in and going. You probably got Mickey Mouse somewhere around you, right? Like,
Yeah. So we live like 30 minutes from Disney. We live 30 minutes from downtown. And I specifically chose this city called Claremont
right,
because it's like a smaller city, like 50,000 people, away from all the tourists and everything, but close enough where I can go take my kids to Disney World if I wanted to, or go downtown. It is different because I mean, I spent 39 years, 40 years in Northern Virginia. All of my family, all of my wife's family is up there. My friends that I grew up with, my childhood friends, they're all up there.
right,
And down here we didn't know anybody. We have a set of friends that we have met down here, but it's not the same.
right.
I mean, right now it's nice because I have the door open, my window open because it's just not humid. It's perfect weather, but I do miss being around friends and family.
Yeah, no, I get that. So my wife and I, she got a job in Alabama after grad school. So I currently live in Maryland. And when we met, we were living in Maryland, and
Okay.
so we moved from Maryland down to Alabama, and all of
Mhm.
her friends and family were all up here. And so when we moved to Alabama, it was pretty much like we didn't know anybody. We did
Mhm.
try to meet up with some people. It just, doesn't really click,
Yeah.
And that happens, it's like you hang out and it's just like you just don't resonate, like and it's also very difficult too. It's like you kind of have maybe an unrealistic expectation, because like you're comparing them sometimes to friends that you've known for 10, 20 years, and
Yeah.
you've kind of had all this rapport, and like all these backstories, you got these inside jokes, like
Mhm.
what you did back in fifth grade, and you can bring that up and talk about
Yeah.
how stupid it was that you did this thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that with like especially like when you're 40 years old and you're trying to like meet somebody for the first time. Do you feel like, I mean, what has the process been for you, now living in Florida, trying to kind of recreate those types of friendships locally where you are now?
I honestly have not spent any time doing that at all.
Right.
My main focus has just been making sure that my business is running the way that it should be, and just making sure that the family's fed and everything. My wife, we just happen to have like our closest friends down here.
Hmm.
Um, just happen to be part of the same homeschool group.
Right.
And so my wife and the kid's mom, they're like they went to Costco yesterday. They went to Goodwill yesterday, just because they have a lot of the same interest, and then my daughter is best friends with her son, so it's like it just kind of worked out. So I kind of rely on my that group to make friends, but if it were to me, I again, loner, only child. I built a gym in my house, so I wouldn't have to go to the gym, right? So I have everything that I need at home. So that hasn't been. I haven't really searched out friends down here.
Right. But I mean, I have seen that you like kind of have gone on to a couple of different podcasts and stuff. So I mean, like, what motivated that? Is that a business decision, friends, both? I mean, it can definitely be both. I mean, just trying to network in general.
Yeah, networking has been a large part of my business and what it is that I have to do in my organization.
Right.
So my job is to find money and find opportunity, and just by going on podcast is definitely a way to expand. And I mean, a lot of a lot of the people that come on my podcast are friends that I met in the industry.
Right.
We're not local, but most of my friends are online, which I think is pretty crazy.
Right.
But yeah, most of my I mean, almost all my new friends are online.
An interesting thing was that I saw in another interview that you actually met your wife online, right? Like, you guys were playing a video game. Can you tell me what the video game was?
Yeah, so it's StarCraft.
Okay, okay.
Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it. It's a Blizzard game, right? But
Yeah.
I played World of Warcraft for a long time. I never
Okay.
really
Yeah.
played StarCraft. But like StarCraft was like it was like ships, and then like you build like fortresses and stuff and like shoot each other, right? Like kind of like
Yeah.
Warcraft, but like more modern, like or Warcraft 3 or whatever, like more
Mhm.
modern, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's like spacey, I guess, versus
Right.
World of Warcraft was more like I don't know how to Earth in the back in the day, I guess, with
Right.
mythical creatures. But yeah, it was we lived probably 15 minutes from each other.
Hmm.
And we had, so in Blizzard or in the online platform, they have this channel or
Right.
channels that you can go into. And so my friends and I always went into the 703 channel because
Hmm.
that was just our area code. And so I didn't know that her and her friends were in the same channel. So we just happened to be in that same channel at the same time with nobody else. So that's how we met through StarCraft.
Right. That's really cool, though. I mean, like, what are the odds? Like, just in general, and especially like, in that era. I mean, I don't want to, generalize. There weren't a
Mhm.
whole lot of girls that were playing video games online.
Yeah.
I just know because I was there, and I remember like, and also there was just like a whole, there was a stigma about like, I remember like being told, like growing up that like everybody online that was a girl was, like either like a predator or something like, you've heard this, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah.
me. And I don't want to, just sound like I'm making stereotypes. I mean, I don't think that's true at all. But at the same time, it was not very common. I think it was just more common, I think, for young boys to just like go online and do video games and shit.
Yeah, yeah, really. Because again, all of my friends that I was going to go meet up were all guys.
Right.
I didn't have any girlfriends or friends that were girls that played any of these games.
Right. So how did you originally get into StarCraft? I mean, like,
Friends.
you were playing video games, at a young age, right?
Yeah. It was friends from high school. High school. The group of friends that I guess our close group of friends. The best man at my wedding, he introduced me to StarCraft.
Right.
And we just started playing, and we ended up playing for years. I think into college.
Right. Do you feel like, I mean, when did you stop? Do you still play games, or did you stop playing?
Yeah, I stopped playing, and it was really after I stopped playing pretty like a year or two after I got married.
I find it a little odd though that like, you would stop playing after you got married, considering you met your wife through this game, right? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because we ended up. So at the time when I met, well, in college, I used to play a lot of flag football.
Right.
And so we just ended up going out, finding groups to play flag football. We played ultimate frisbee in a league, and then we played volleyball. So it was a lot of sports versus video games.
Right. So you're just
Yeah.
like more into sports than games. You're just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I was never very I was never very good at sports or anything. So I was just like, all right, at least I could be good at sports in a video game, like play some NBA 2K or.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with like video games. I used to play Halo
Right.
2 and Halo 3 just like religiously.
Right.
but yeah, it's just like it's a different thing. But I've heard that video games are actually good for coordination and for the mind.
Right. I mean, I definitely feel like there are a lot of things I took from, video games. Like I used to play like a lot of RPGs and stuff. And there are a lot of, things that I feel like they just help shape my moral character.
Mhm.
Just to kind of want to be a good person. I feel like some of the games were just based on being like a good person, and that taught me that like I want to like keep my ethics aligned with, this type of, behavior as opposed to like doing other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like there was definitely a time I think when I used to I played World of Warcraft was really the one where I was like, like I played a lot, way too much. As I've gotten older, like I eventually stopped playing. I don't even know why. I never like once said like I'm not going to. And I still like might play a game like every once in a while, but I just kind of just stopped because I just didn't need to play anymore. I just have other things I want to focus on, and whatever those things are. And it's probably like that for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, like video games are a ton of fun, and again, like not saying that there's anything wrong with them. It's just I saw it as I'm getting all these accomplishments, I'm doing all these cool things, but it's in a video game. But then when I come out, like it doesn't really change
Right.
my life for it doesn't get me closer to what I want to accomplish in my life.
Right. Do you know, like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Is there an actual goal, or is it just like I'm going to keep on pushing until I can't push anymore?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know Dan Martell.
I'm not familiar.
So I actually joined his like elite coaching program, and I was just catching up on some of the things. And I actually have a list of achievements that I want to um, accomplish in 25 years. Can I share those?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, cool. It's pretty good
You
timing.
get you got the whole thing on a tablet.
Yeah, yep. The first thing that I have is my wife and I have a very happy and healthy marriage at 25 years. In 25 years,
Right.
my daughters both have happy and healthy marriages and have started their own families. Um, we have hundreds of $1 million in the bank and can experience the world um, in any way that we want to.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. That's ambitious.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, but there's a reason why I want the hundreds of $1 millions, which is coming down here. So we have a self funding charity that sends all of its profits to help various causes. So for me, like eczema is a big thing. I know like a lot of people deal with it, and to me it seems like it's underrated in terms of change. I don't know, impact on lives, but we moved down here because our youngest has eczema, and every time we left the area, it got better. So we do come across a lot of families that aren't in that same financial situation, and so we want to be able to help them, do the things to help their kids because it sucks. Like it's really it sucks. And then also my nephew has a rare genetic mutation where the signals from his brain don't necessarily go to all the limbs the way that he wants it to, and so because of that, like there's a lot of struggles that he goes through, as well as my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. So I want to be able to have that self-funding charity send money and help fund some of these things that to help figure out how to make these lives easy, make these people's lives easier, make figure out how to fix whatever is crossing the signals.
Right.
And then helping foster children. Like I can't imagine. I have a friend of mine who's an investor. She's from New York. She works with the local municipality to create, buy houses and turn them into group homes for foster children, for those that age out of the system, to get them in a spot where they are can able to function in society and survive. Not just getting thrown out there. So being able to help them would be something that I'd want to be able to do. And then in 25 years, I want to be in the best shape of my life, and have a best selling book would be kind of cool too. So those are the things that I want to accomplish.
Best shape in your life, like that's definitely, something that I think is doable. It's just a matter of whether or not you put in the effort to do it.
Yeah.
Best selling book, I think, I mean, best selling, yeah, that's a little bit.
Yeah. That's
It's
going
one
to be
thing to
tough.
say that you want a book, but it's another thing to say that you're best selling. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
And like I can like just from talking to you, I feel like you're super ambitious, which is cool, but also my mind frame is completely different than yours. I could never get to a point where I feel so confident in myself that I would, have those goals. They just feel like a little bit unreachable, I think, especially when you say like hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm not trying to like, trying to like push you down or anything.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that like, I'm looking at my own, kind of perspective of the world. What happens if you don't meet these goals, right? Like, I mean, and what if you get 25 years from now, you've made only like $1 million and
Yeah, that's to me that's not an option.
but what if it does, right? Like that's the thing. You say it's not an option, but it absolutely is an option. You can't just say that there's zero probability that that's going to happen. Nobody can
Yeah,
predict the future. You could
of
very
course not.
easily wake up tomorrow and something could happen that like, ends up costing you millions of dollars. So I
Mhm.
mean, like, I think that's a little bit almost arrogant, to be honest with you. And I don't want to insult you or anything like that.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to, just be honest and have like a deep conversation and
Yeah.
try to like, connect in a space that might be uncomfortable, but also
Mhm.
it's a space that's uncomfortable, but it's important because I think that it's a space that doesn't get talked about very often.
Yeah, and I am not offended. I am not insulted. Don't worry. I understand. Like these are things that are they're huge goals, right? And you're right. It's very possible that these won't happen, but I can't go into this thinking that it's not going to happen. So you'll hear people, and something that I've learned about a lot of wealthy people are that they've gone broke at least 3 times
Hmm.
before they've hit whatever it is at wherever they're at now.
Right.
And so it's not about the things that happen to you that push you down. It's like how do you come back from it, right? Because everybody deals with something. Everybody deals with setbacks, but do you take like a victim um, view of it? Like, is like, I can't believe this happened to me, or do you look at it as like there's a learning lesson behind it? And that's like a big thing too. Like when I was in college, in high school, I got picked on a lot. I was always the smallest person in school. I was told, like, in high school, I was told that the middle school is across the street, right? I didn't have a ton of friends in high school because, again, I switched districts. And and then my parents growing up, it's not like they meant any harm, but they were always like kind of pushing me down, saying, oh, you need to do this better, because they just had high standards for me.
Right.
And so yeah, I had to deal with a lot of like self-esteem, and I still deal with like self-esteem and confidence issues now. But just telling yourself, like, self-speak is the biggest, is huge, right? How you talk about yourself, how you talk to yourself is huge. If you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm a failure, I'm never going to accomplish any of these things, then yeah, you're never going to. But if you say, okay, I can figure it out, I can do this, I have these dreams, I know they're big, but I know I'll figure out how to get there, then it puts you in a completely different realm, in my opinion.
Hmm. I'm not sure I'm convinced though.
Well, how do you talk to yourself?
Well, it's not even about how I talk to myself. Let's say this again. Like here's another goal of yours. One of your goals was that your daughters would both get married and have families. What if they don't want to get married? That's out of your control, right?
Yeah, that is
Are
out
you
of my
going to force
control.
them to get married because that's on your goal?
No, that I will never force them to do anything, but that's just what I hope for, right?
Right.
So that's not something that I have a direct impact. I mean, I could, right? If I programmed to be like, this is what you should have and this is what you want to do. But
I mean, you could. That's not ethical, right? Like,
yeah, but the way that I grew up with divorced parents, right? And
right.
so
So did
my
I.
entire life after that has been, I want to have a family and I want to do it. I, I want to have a happy family where we all grow up together and we all accomplish things that we want to do. Maybe I should change that goal to be, my daughters have the life that they want versus, they have their own families and all that.
Right.
But to me, like, having the family structure is all that I've ever wanted. And yes, it's challenging, but I'm also very happy with my what I have, and very appreciative and grateful. And so, I think that I mean I want them to have the same thing, whether it's fulfillment through having family or fulfillment through having a great career or pursuing their dreams. Yeah, but
Right.
I mean I like for them to have a family.
One thing I will say is that I don't think that there's necessarily any harm in trying to have ambitious goals, because I think it's one of those things where whatever the kind of metaphor is or whatever, where they're like, if you shoot for the stars you land on the moon, type of thing. So it's
Mhm.
like, even if you don't get to a certain goal of 100 million or 200, whatever a billion, whatever it is you want, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't get to that and you land on 50 million, that's pretty good, right? Like, that's better than, I mean, the fact of the matter is that you already, I'm assuming, right? Like, because all you really need is like a net worth of, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. I'd have to go look up the statistic, but it's somewhere
Mhm.
around like 300,000 or 400,000, 500,000, something like that. To have a net worth of like that, to be in the number one, in the 1% of the most wealthy people in the world, right? Not in
Mhm.
America, but in the world.
Yeah.
Just because it's so disproportionately wealthy in America compared
Yeah.
to a lot of other places in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, if you get to 50 million, you're not even so when I say these things and I kind of push back against you, what I'm not even saying that I don't think that you can do it. It's not a personal attack against you. It's more so, if anybody stood in front of me and said that, and I would still feel the same way, right? Like, it has nothing to do with you personally. Like, I can definitely see you're hustling, and that's kind of like what you do. You're a finance person. You're always thinking about finance and educating yourself on finance.
Yeah.
So I think, I definitely think that you're going to be successful. I just, I think when you put it into that terms of like, okay, we're gonna, like, these are my goals. What I'm really thinking about more than anything is your mental health. When you, like, if you get to a point where because you're putting something that's now out of your control, you're attaching your mental health to something that's not in your control, and that's
Right.
usually not a good method, because if something happens that causes it to not work out the way that you expect it to, then that's going to backfire against you, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
unless you're just a nonstop, to me, it kind of sounds a little bit like you're kind of like, you drive yourself with maybe negative energy. You kind of, you think that you have to do these things because, they're required of you, but that's a burden, right? Like, it's not just like, I want to be, you're like, I have to do this to provide for my family. And that's an obligation, rather than, something that is just straight up like pure, well, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, you can respond.
Yeah, and I understand, right? Attaching yourself to a specific goal, I think I agree with you, is dangerous. And that was something that I had to deal with as well, because I always attached myself like, this is the goal, this is what I have to accomplish. And so I did not appreciate the journey to get to that goal. And yes, to me that is very dangerous, because you're sacrificing your mental health. And I did that. It was definitely in that spot.
Right.
But switching from focusing on that goal to, this is what I want to accomplish, and I'm going to appreciate every single step of this journey, because not everyone gets to do this, right? You have someone in the hospital who is in the ICU, like, just deathly ill, wishing that they could be in your spot, or just wishing to deal with the problems that you're dealing with.
Right.
So that's what I focus on. Like, how do I appreciate every step of this journey versus, this is the goal, this is all I care about.
Right. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You
Mhm.
mentioned eczema. I
Yeah.
think you also mentioned in a different interview that your mom, I don't know, she's not really a fashion designer, but she like makes clothes, right?
Mhm.
And I think that you mentioned that she created like some, I guess, eczema-proof clothes. Yes, is that correct?
Yeah. So one of the things that we had to deal with eczema is, my daughter would always be scratching because she's itchy. And I think my wife, she digs into rabbit holes for everything. And she said that there was nothing that after a certain age, there was nothing that protects the hands from scratching. So what my mom, like she studied fashion, she got an associates in that. And she didn't use it to make money, but she just does it for fun. Like she makes her own clothes. And so, yeah, she created shirts and jackets that have those things that where you can cover the hands so that when you're scratching, it's not the nail on the skin where the skin is like getting tore up. It's just fabric on fabric. So it's a little bit easier on the skin.
Okay, that's cool. Can you tell me a little bit more? Like, are there other, things that I might not know because I'm not very familiar with eczema, about like kind of day-to-day difficulties or just, I know you mentioned that your, daughter is scratching a lot, and that's probably got to be, difficult, just for you because that's another one of those things where it's kind of like out of your control. You can't really make this thing disappear, but it's something that you kind of see your child, kind of have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, psychologically, it's more tough on my wife than for me. So one, like eczema is tied to a lot of health issues. I think the biggest thing is like gut health, right? So when my wife was pregnant, she had taken antibiotics because she had food poisoning,
Hmm.
and then when she was breastfeeding, she had a blockage, and so she had to take antibiotics for that. So all those antibiotics came in and destroyed my daughter's gut health,
Uh,
right? And then top of that, she was a C-section baby, so she didn't get all of the bacteria that you're supposed to during a natural birth.
right.
So that affects it as well. And so because of that, there are food allergies that we have to deal with because the body doesn't react to certain things the way that we think it should. It views these foods as pathogen or something that needs to be eliminated. So because of that, it causes eczema flare ups. And so, yes, you can use steroids, right? Steroids help deal with the skin itself,
Right.
but the real underlying issue is on the inside. And so it's tough. I mean, you have the three of us all have one diet, and then she can't have certain foods. So she has to have her own diet. On top of that, she's always hungry. So then she has a limited amount of food that she can eat, and she always wants to eat it. And the more you eat it, the more your body starts to believe that that's uh, grows an allergy to that. So then dealing with that is really tough. Was really tough. And then she ended up getting COVID one of the summers, and after that, I don't know what happened, but it was every single night, 20 minutes at a time, she'd be like scratching, and it would happen like every single hour. So,
Right.
and then to get her to fall asleep, she was always itchy. So it would take an hour and a half for her to fall asleep. I mean, the impact that has, my wife not getting any sleep, me not getting any sleep, and then having to deal with all this of watching her suffer and be uncomfortable, and then having to deal with her food allergies. And that's why we picked up and left. Like we just couldn't take it anymore, and we wanted something. Nothing we were doing helped. Like none of the holistic doctors, the functional health doctors, the pee test, the poop test, the blood test, nothing was helping. So we just packed up and left.
Has it been any different in Florida?
Oh, so much better. I think July of this year, was it 9 months after we moved down here? Finally, do not have to put any kind of moisturizer on her. She's finally sleeping throughout the night. She's so much happier. We're
Is that like a warm weather thing or?
honestly, I think it was something in the house.
Okay.
Something in the house that we were up because we spent like a month and a half up there, and there were some things like because there's a lot of pollen up there, and the cold weather. There was still nothing close to what it used to be, where it was like flaking and breaking and constant like redness. But yeah, I get maybe it's the weather. Who knows? But yeah, we've been able to open up a lot for her.
Right. But you're doing better now?
Oh, so much better. Like
That's good.
95%. Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with like real estate in general. Like, is there a lot of collaboration that happens, or is it mostly just kind of like every person for themselves?
It depends on what community you go into. The community that I'm in, it's all about collaboration.
Right.
Because, when I first got started, it was all about me owning 100% and doing 100% of the work so I can be sole owner. Right. it's great, but there's only so much you can accomplish. After partnering, like then I can scale. Then I triple my portfolio with a lot less work.
Right.
I have people helping me. Like I'm not very good with paperwork. I'm not. I mean, I can underwrite, but I'm not great with underwriting. So I bring in these people on my team, and because of that, we can accomplish so much more. So it's all about collaboration in our community.
Right. And I mean, yeah, I mean, not just, your community. I think overall, it's just like, I think American culture is very independent, right? Where just, every person is kind of just meant to like, fend for themselves. But realistically speaking, uh, people can accomplish a lot more by networking, can accomplish a lot more by building relationships with each other and
Mhm.
being able to, utilize each other's resources, right? Like, I could do certain things and then you could do certain things. And maybe, you need me to do one thing. And then, it's really just like a typical like economic trade, what is the actual, I forgot what it's called. The productivity frontier or whatever. Kind of
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
specialize in what you specialize in. I
Mhm.
specialize in what I specialize in, and that allows us to like create more than we could ever create by ourselves, type of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Like in consulting, there were three main companies that were my company, and then two main competitors for us. One company was good at one. Is three lines of business. One company was really good at one. Another
Right.
company was good at the other, and we were like good at. We all had really good strengths and were weak in other areas. Had we just combined and collaborated, we could have done like so much more. And so yeah, collaborating. My friends always say collaboration over competition.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep you too long. I know we've like been running for about an hour or so. So I'll go ahead and wrap this up. But I did want to say thank you very much for taking time out to talk to me and everything. Hope I don't hope I didn't make you feel like attacked or anything like that. I was just like it's like when it's just like I just have my own perspectives of things, and like so it's like comes as a shock almost to me, to my system, when like I hear something like that, because it's very far and away from kind of like the way I think about like my trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I really, truly, honestly appreciate open communication, and I really wish. I mean, seeing everything that's happening in this country, I really wish that we could all appreciate each other's differences and just understand that we all come from the same place. I mean, we can disagree, but still be the best of friends. So I
Right.
appreciate the honest conversation.
Yeah, 100%. And I thank you for being honest. And I thank you for like, having this conversation and taking time out of your day just to have it. And that's it. Hopefully you have a great day and enjoy your
Yeah,
holiday.
thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed this. It was something different, and yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.